Pernell Whitaker is a 4-weight class world champion, known for his speed and incredible defense. Whitaker is insanely fun to watch fight, both because of his technical skill and his love for playing to the crowd. Far from a flashy fighter who relied on clowning and reflexes, Whitaker was a master tactician and a fierce competitor. In this fight, Whitaker was down in almost all the rounds. He couldn't win on points, so he needed a knockout. When he got his chance, his response was absolutely brutal. So now that we've established that Whitaker was definitely a fighter to take seriously, let's look at some of the more technical aspects to his game. We'll begin by looking at the foundation of both his defense and offense, his jab. Jabs can be difficult for Southpaw fighters, as their opponent's opposite lead hand can easily get in the way of landing clean. As such, a lot of fighters focus more on controlling their opponent's lead hand to clear a path for their rear hand, rather than trying to jab around it. This was not so for Whitaker. Pernell was a total master of the open stance jab, making it the foundation of his entire style. In fact, Pernell heavily utilized the same circle and jab footwork as Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Sugar Ray Leonard. But astonishingly, he found a way to make it work as a Southpaw fighter. If you haven't seen my Muhammad Ali video on this technique, I've left a link in the description. But the basics are that Ali would cross-step his back foot behind him as he jabbed, hopping and pivoting off of his lead leg as he did so. This footwork pattern is incredibly effective at turning and getting the inside angle, keeping a fighter safely sideways while opening up his opponent simultaneously. As a Southpaw, Pernell used this footwork pattern to circle to the outside, which seems fairly straightforward, except for the fact that Whitaker needed to keep his foot on the inside of his opponents to cleanly land his jabs, all while circling in the opposite direction. It's already a challenge for a Southpaw to not let his opponent's lead foot get in the way of what he's trying to do. But Whitaker literally put his opponent's foot in the way of where he wanted to go every time he executed this pattern. The reasoning behind this has to do with the technical aspects of fighting in an open stance, where one fighter has his left foot forward and the other has his right foot forward. In an open position, stepping the lead foot inside aligns a fighter's lead hand with their opponent's center line, making it a great angle to land jabs. In contrast, stepping the lead foot to the outside aligns the fighter's rear hand with his opponent's center line, making it perfect to land a cross. Watch as Pernell sneaks his foot to the outside to try to set up his rear hand. This meant that in order to land his jab as he circled outside, Whitaker needed to keep his lead foot inside. The only real way to do that without getting his lead foot tangled up or stepped on was with Ali's cross step. This cross step also neutralized the threat of his opponent's rear hand. By stepping inside just enough to get the job done and turning out of his jab, Whitaker closed himself off from his opponent's rear hand and was able to step safely offline. Here's something truly impressive. Pernell throws his first jab with his foot on the inside to follow the center line, and then steps outside to throw his 1-2 to get a dominant foot position. The timing and distance management involved to pull this off is absolutely insane. But Whitaker's almost obsessive attention to footwork placement played a huge role both defensively and offensively, and helped him to set up some of his biggest shots. Once his opponent got conditioned to chase him, they would overreach to try to close distance. Or turn too hard to try to angle in shots as he pivoted. Whitaker took advantage of this by breaking his own rhythm and stopping short, planting and sinking down as his opponents walked right into a hard power blow. A big reason Whitaker's opponents became frustrated enough to make these mistakes in the first place was his legendary head movement. Whitaker used the cross-step pattern for his head movement as well, ducking and slipping as he danced. And his ability to stand right in front of his opponent and make them miss every shot was always enjoyable for the crowd. But this wasn't his normal method of defense. Whitaker's main form of protection was distance management at long range, and something similar to a crouching Philly shell at mid-range. A Philly shell stance is usually a bad idea for a Southpaw, as an orthodox opponent has a much clearer path to land with their rear hand. But as mentioned before, Whitaker pivoted outside with his lead foot at an inside angle, putting his center line off angle for his opponent's cross. At the same time, his lead shoulder and elbow protected his lead side from jabs and hooks. If his opponent did manage to find an angle to land his cross, Whitaker used his rear hand, often in conjunction with his crouch, to parry, catch, or even cross block. It's not as flashy, but it worked incredibly well. Something not often mentioned was how great Whitaker was at infighting. He would lean on his opponents and press on them with his head like a wrestler, circling out to take an outside angle. Another trick was to switch into an orthodox stance to angle in uppercuts. Or he could change head positions to his opponent's power side to land liver blows. Also, he loved to drive his opponent's head down with a lead hook to set up his uppercuts. Pernell Whitaker was a master tactician, a showboating crowd pleaser, and a brutal competitor. I invite everyone to check out his fights. They're both entertaining and insightful. If you're interested in learning all about footwork, you can pre-order my new book, Footwork Wins Fights, out in mid-June. Or if you'd like to know how your favorite fighters put so much power into their strikes, you can check out my book, Power of the Pros. And if you like this video, but MMA is more your thing, you can check out exclusive breakdowns on my Patreon. All of these are linked in the comment section below. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.